Now it's night time here at Majestic Aquariums, so all the lights are off. But the discussion that I want to have with you now is when populating a reef tank, there's, let's say, 3 ways to do it. And I want you to put your vote on the bottom in the comments section. Which of these 3 ways do you do and why? And which of these 3 ways would you do if you actually had a tank? So, way number 1 is start with the fish. Now, the advantage of starting with the fish is that you can run a low salinity. When you buy fish, they are typically in lower salinity, and that's because the lower salinity will ease osmotic pressure, and therefore you are able to have less issues with stress and less issues with parasitic infection such as white spot. So in the industry, we typically run low salinity because the collectors typically put the fish in low salinity. That eases osmotic pressure. It means more energy available for the immune system, respiration system, and so forth. And we have less issues with parasitic infection, with body pinching and other sorts of osmotic issues. So if you're going to not have any corals in the aquarium, then you can start with low salinity. I would recommend putting a little bit of fish in, then waiting for a full month, then you can add some more fish, then wait for a full month, then you can add some more fish, then wait for a full month, then you can add some more fish. And when you add the fish, you really want to be adding them in groups. So any clownfish, then the next month, any tangs, then the next month, any wrasse, then the next month, any blennies, and so on. So if you create a wish list, you really want to add the fish from the wish list that are first, because therefore there's less territorial issues. Now, the other thing that you can do too is if you were super committed, you could not put sand in the tank, and then if you had live rock or dead rock for that matter, if you did have any issues with parasitic infection or whatever, then you could dose the aquarium with a more effective, often copper-based medication that you could not use if you had corals in there. If you are going to use a copper-based medication, it's better if you don't have your rock or sand in the tank. So this is a relatively unrealistic expectation. Now, so number 1 way, add the fish. Once all the fish are settled, all the fish are going well, it's been a month or 2 since the last lot went in, everyone seems well adjusted, everyone seems to be getting along, then you can slowly raise the salinity. Then you can start adding your corals. Corals can be added quite quickly. Whereas the fish need to be added quite slowly. So add some, wait a month, add some, wait a month. And a month is basically like a quarantine period, which once again allows the stabilization of bacteria and pathogens. So once again, minimizes white spot. Option number 2 is add your corals first. In this option, you'll tend to start with, say, some clownfish or something just to provide some nutrients. Then you'll put them in low salinity, a small stock of fish, maybe a blenny, some clownfish, just something minimal. Then you slowly raise your salinity. Then you can add your corals. Once again, the corals can go in quite fast, and you can populate the tank up and it can look amazing. But there's not many fish in it. Then it's time to add your fish. Once the corals are in there and the corals are established and the corals are happy, it's not desirable to add the fish at full salinity, because that can osmotically shock your fish and increase the chance of them getting diseases like white spot, because these sorts of diseases love the saltier water. So if you get fish that the collector has had in 0.16, then it's come here to the shop, maybe at 0.020, 0.016, and then from 0.016 to 0.020, not 16, and then they go into your tank, which is say 0.025, then that's far too high, and the osmoregulation system may not be able to handle it. And that means the fish have to put all their energy into the osmoregulation system, and that means that the immune system will be compromised. So this is a very bad idea. The next idea, which is not ideal, is that you can lower your salinity, introduce the fish, and then slowly raise your salinity again. In general, providing you don't leave your salinity down, I find this is totally fine. It is not a perfect scenario. But sometimes people lower their salinity to put the fish in, the fish settle in, they forget to raise their salinity, and then they basically start having trouble with their corals. Now, the third way of introducing fish, which is by far the best, is to add your corals, have a salinity of 0.025 full salinity, get some cleaner shrimp, because they're a lovely and wonderful parasite exterminator. Also, you can have plenty of corals, so therefore when the pathogens that are in there potentially propagate and go into their dinoflagellate phase, the corals can potentially feed on them, therefore minimizing the chance of a pathogen transaction. And then you get yourself a quarantine tank. So something like a Ledi 75, perfect quarantine tank. It'll only cost you a few $100. Chuck it in the kids' room, chuck it in the spare bedroom, chuck it in the garage, doesn't matter where. Chuck a bit of decoration for the fish to swim around. Then you can keep your tank at 0.025, 1.025. Then you can put your fish into the quarantine tank. In the quarantine tank, they can be added to a low salinity, 0.01, 0.020. Then you can monitor these fish over a month. Then over a month, if the fish require any medication, you can do that very confidently and economically in a little quarantine tank like the Aquarel Ledi up there. All nice away from your corals and away from any other fish. Then, after a month, when you're happy with the fish and you've slowly raised the salinity and ensured the salinity, pH, temperature, etc. is the same in the quarantine tank as the main tank, you can then just net the fish out and throw them in the main tank. And that would mean that you've given the fish plenty of time for their immune system to come back, and plenty of time to feed them up, to get to know them. Then you put them in the tank. At that point, you can then go and get some new fish for your quarantine tank, and then start the month cycle again, ensuring that it's always at least a month until you add groups of fish into the main display tank, and you're preparing your fish in the quarantine tank. So, option 1, get fish and don't have coral. Option 2, get coral and then slowly add fish, adjusting your salinity each time you get new fish. There is merit in option 1 and there is merit in option 2. And as far as I'm concerned, they're equal. Both slightly undesirable, but an option. So let's say option 1 is probably better because we're not stressing the coral with the salinity going up and down. Option 3 is the best. And the reason why option 3 is the best is that you're mitigating risk, because any potential pathogen activity is occurring in the display tank before going into the main tank and potentially infesting the rest of your fish and coronavirusing your fish tank. You're pre-quarantining. We've learnt all about that lately in year 2020, how important it is to quarantine so we don't go coronavirusing ourselves. So pre-quarantining an aquarium is really important too, so you don't go coronavirusing your fish or pathogen attacking your fish. So once again, the quarantine tank is by far the best, and that allows you to have a beautiful populated coral tank quickly. So if you're impatient, get a quarantine tank. If you're patient, then you could go for option 1. If you are, I would say the most popular option would be option 2, but the best option would be option 3. Anyway, put a little note on the bottom of this video. Tell us what have you done that's worked, and tell us what have you done that's failed. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you're new here, and we'll see you in the next video.